Good evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Andrew Laidley. Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett says the tourism sector is beginning to play a greater role globally in helping to grow economies. The minister says that's why there has been greater focus on maximizing the sector in Jamaica, which has been yielding good results. Minister Bartlett was speaking at a Rotary Club of Kingston function this afternoon. More in this report.
According to Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett, tourism is fast becoming a major driver for economies across the globe. He says this has proven to be particularly evident in Jamaica.
Tourism is today the largest industry in the world, surpassing finance, manufacturing, and the extractive industries. It contributes 10% of global GDP, and that's the only area in which it comes behind any, because finance is still 19%.
Mr. Bartlett argues that the Caribbean may be considered the most tourist-dependent region in the world, as in some cases, tourism contributes up to 70% of GDP.
We are the most tourism-dependent region on earth. Of the 28 countries in the Caribbean, including English-speaking, Anglophone, Francophone, Dutch, and so on, 16 of those 28 countries have GDP dependence of 50% and more. And 79 countries in the world have dependence on tourism beyond 10%.
In the meantime, Minister Bartlett says tourism in Jamaica continues to thrive, with evidence of record arrival numbers each month.
Between January and June of this year, we welcome a total of 2,165,330 visitors, a record. An increase of 3.9% over the same period last year. But I want to tell you that the last 3 months, April, May, and June, have averaged 10% arrival for stopover visitors, a record of any sort in the history of Jamaica.
For BATV News, I'm Norda Francis Williams.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness held discussions with officials from the U.S. government today. The U.S. delegation was led by the acting U.S. Deputy Secretary of State and Undersecretary for Political Affairs Thomas Shannon. The media release from Jamaica House pointed out that Jamaica and the U.S. have several multilateral and bilateral agreements in a wide range of areas, including trade, investment, and security. Jamaica House noted that Prime Minister Holness and Mr. Shannon spoke on ways to deepen efforts to make the relationship between both countries more relevant. Prime Minister Holness noted that Jamaica is taking steps to ensure that its fiscal management system is in order. While acknowledging that Jamaica faces challenges in the area of crime, the Prime Minister expressed the hope that Jamaica and the U.S. can strengthen cooperation in this regard. He said a major point for discussion going forward should be border security, and Jamaica has made investment in this area. The Consumer Affairs Commission, CAC, says it hopes to complete the verification of these 382 claims submitted by motorists who were affected by contaminated gasoline in late 2015. By the end of this month, Chairman Kent Gammon says a special technical committee established by the CAC to evaluate the complaints has completed verification of 224 or 60% of the claims received. He was speaking at the CAC's quarterly media briefing at the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries in New Kingston yesterday. The committee is headed by representatives of the Island Traffic Authority, ITA, and includes personnel from the Heart Trust, NTA, and the Jamaican German Automotive School, JAGAS. Some $32 million in compensation is being sought by the CAC on behalf of the affected consumers. From the petroleum marketing companies whose stations were identified as the locations where the gasoline was sourced, Mr. Gammon said once the committee completes the validation exercise, discussions will resume with the companies in anticipation of a settlement with a few months. He says the intention is to also have a meeting after the process involving the Minister Carl Samuda, petroleum marketing company representatives, and other stakeholders. Still to come, government collaborates with Japan to better manage waste. The details when we return. Welcome back. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Darrell Vaz, formally launched a $700,000 plastic waste management project yesterday. The project is being undertaken by the government with support from the UN Environment through its International Environmental Technology Center based in Japan. Anthony Morgan reports.
Darrell Vaz says the waste management project has several components which will assist the country in advancing the national waste management agenda.
Of particular note is the development of a regulatory impact assessment for all types of plastic, which will assist the government in identifying the appropriate regulatory instrument or approaches to govern the management of specific plastic products, including plastic bags, PET bottles, and styrofoam.
He says the Gully project is one aspect to be focused on under the project.
We will institute a comprehensive waste management program within the communities that run along one of the gullies which empty into the Kingston Harbor. The project will include a sustainable livelihood component along with the introduction of collection of disposal mechanisms as well as intensive public education and awareness program. I strongly believe that this project, valued at $700,000 US, or approximately 90 million Jamaican dollars.
Meanwhile, Minister Vaz points out that there is great value in waste. He says the country can also benefit by having environmentally friendly waste management practices.
The Waste Management Conference, which is being held in Kingston this week, is an excellent opportunity to share best practices, expertise, and technologies within our region. As SIDS, we have similar challenges and experiences which make it important that small island development states are actively innovating and developing and implementing mechanisms and processes which can effectively address these issues.
For BATV News, I'm Anthony Morgan.
Meanwhile, Japan's ambassador to Jamaica, Masanori Nakano, says the waste management project represents the continued partnership between both countries. Here's more.
Mr. Nakano says the waste management project seeks to enhance the legislative framework in Jamaica aimed at reducing plastic and styrofoam from land-based activities.
Prime Minister Abe underscored that Japan's policy towards Jamaica and other CARICOM countries are under the following three pillars. First pillar, cooperation towards sustainable development, including vulnerabilities particular to small island developing states. Second pillar, deepening and expanding bonds founded on exchange of friendship. And the third pillar, cooperation in addressing challenges of the international community.
He says it represents the government of Japan's efforts to further substantiate the relationship between Japan and Jamaica.
Japan is very much aware that small island developing states, such as Jamaica, are particularly affected by the increase of marine plastic litter in the marine and the coastal environment. The Japan-Jamaica collaboration in this area began approximately 16 years ago when the government of Japan provided financial support to the government of Jamaica for implementing a solid waste management project to produce a short-term strategy as well as a policy framework for the plastic packaging materials.
The ambassador adds that Japan hopes to continue being an important partner for Jamaica in addressing the issue of waste management.
Through the provision of technical cooperation, training, as well as follow-up cooperation support to Jamaica and other beneficiary countries worldwide. This year, 2017, Jamaica celebrates its 30th anniversary of the dispatch of JICA volunteers to Jamaica. They are also going to host a display exposition at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade on coming July 10th.
For BATV News, I'm Amita Prasad-Webb.
Manager of Innovation and Risk at GK Insurance, Jordan Tate, says Grace Kennedy has put plans in place to ensure that its customers who depend heavily on remittances are always covered. He says the company is doing this through its newest microinsurance product, RemitCare. Here's more. If your relative abroad is unable to send you money because of serious bodily injury or death, there's no need to worry. As Jordan Tate explains, that's exactly why GK is now offering RemitCare.
RemitCare is an accidental insurance protection that provides payments to the receiver and his 2 consecutive payments that their sender is not able to do because they have sustained some sort of accident which results in either injuries or which may either be temporary or maybe permanent, or it even leads to death. They can benefit from this cover.
He says GK customers who already use GK Money services automatically qualify for RemitCare.
A person who continuously sends or receives money via Grace Kennedy Money Services locally can get this product. So let me use some examples. A sender in Jamaica and ultimately will have sending money, whether it's overseas or somewhere else in Jamaica, can take it out in the event that they are unable to send money to a receiver because they have experienced an accident. Or a receiver based in Jamaica can take it out in the event that their sender, whether it's overseas or some other part of Jamaica, is unable to send a remittance because that person has an accident and thus unable to continue those remittances.
Mr. Tate emphasized that once a customer is under RemitCare, they will never have to worry about not getting remittances.
When an accident occurs, often that sender has a lot of additional obligations that are not planned for. And as such, their income is directed to take care of that immediate need, to take care of that accident. And so things like providing a remittance, which I really want to do, may be a challenge. And so they would love something to ease that burden, something that they can continue to take care of their loved ones while they can deal with their immediate situation. And so when such occur, a GK Money Services customer who has RemitCare can therefore prioritize dealing with their accident while allowing RemitCare to take care of continuing to provide for their loved one.
For BATV News, I'm Andrew Laidley. Stay with us. Regional and international stories are next. Welcome back. It's time now for regional and international news. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has condemned an attack by government supporters on the opposition-controlled National Assembly that injured several politicians and journalists. Al Jazeera's Alejandro Rampeete reports from Cucuta on Colombia's border with Venezuela.
With their face covered, holding pipes and sticks, dozens of Venezuelans' government supporters stormed the opposition-controlled National Assembly on Wednesday. In plain view of National Guardsmen, they threw stones and firecrackers, unleashing chaos, and made their way inside the chamber, where they chased and beat lawmakers and journalists at the end of a special session marking the country's Independence Day. At least 5 opposition deputies were injured, some bleeding from the head, stumbling around the assembly corridors. One of them, Americo de Gracia, had to be taken on a stretcher to an ambulance suffering from convulsions.
Once again, paramilitary groups with ties to the government broke into the Legislative Palace. 4 lawmakers were injured with cut heads, broken bones. 2 employees of the Parliament television network suffered head injuries. Firearms were brought in by civilians under the complacent watch of security services.
For hours, a crowd of roughly 100 people kept besieging the building, trapping people inside. President Nicolás Maduro, who was overseeing the traditional Independence military parade, condemned the violence and called for an investigation, but also planted doubts about who might be behind the attack.
I have been informed that during this important, brilliant, beautiful civil military event celebrating total independence, there have been some strange occurrences. They are always strange when the opposition is involved.
Protests by government supporters have become the norm in recent months every time the opposition-controlled assembly is in session, but they have never been this violent. This attack is further proof that there's no end in sight to Venezuela's escalating political crisis. At least 91 people have died in a little over 3 months of daily protest. And with the government seeking to change the constitution at the end of July and the opposition promising to stop them, many believe things will only get more violent from here. Alessandro Ampietti, Al Jazeera, Cucuta.
Japan and the EU sealed a political deal for a free trade pact, creating the world's biggest open economic area and signaling resistance to what they see as the U.S. protectionist turn, even as Donald Trump arrived in Europe for the G20 summit. David Pollard reports.
They may be air kisses, but this is fast becoming a meaningful relationship. The EU and Japan now declaring a political agreement as the final move towards a full free trade pact.
We promised to do everything in our power to conclude political and trade talks between Japan and the European Union on the eve of the G20 summit. And we did it.
For Japan too, 4 years of negotiations now becoming literally a very big deal.
Japan and the EU account for 30% of the GDP, 10% of the population and 40% of the trade in the world. So this is the birth of the world's largest free, advanced, industrialised economic zone.
Over 90% of European exports to Japan to be liberalised, according to European Council President Jean-Claude Juncker. Tariffs on bilateral trade to be phased out, and markets such as Japan's public tender system opened up as the two do more business.
We are basically at the same level in terms of economic development. We are fast developing, we are high developed economies, we are mature economies.
And timing, it seems, is everything, coming as it does within hours of the US President's arrival in Europe.
The timing is very much a message to the G20, a message to Donald Trump and the US to say, look, these deals are being done and we will move ahead without you if you continue this protectionist stance.
The hands clasped, but soon to pick up the pen for a final treaty signature expected in the months to come.
EU antitrust regulators are weighing another record fine against Google over its Android mobile operating system. As Sonia Legg reports, they have also set up a panel of experts to give a second opinion on the case.
There's no love lost between European Union regulators and Google. They proved that last week by hitting the tech giant with a record fine for unfairly favouring its shopping service.
It has denied other companies the chance to compete on the merits and to innovate. And most importantly, it has denied European consumers the benefits of competition.
Now Reuters has discovered Google is in line for another blow over Alphabet, its Android mobile operating systems. Antitrust regulators are expected to hit the US giant even harder, accusing it of shutting out rivals.
It takes a lot to harm Google, and they have incredibly deep pockets. So that is one thing which is on Google's side. But the EU has very much had it in for Google for a long time.
It has a third case underway too, involving Google AdSense. And then there's the old tax issue. The saga of where they base their operations isn't over yet.
It's a continuation of trying to make sure Google doesn't have that absolute monopoly. Now, we know that it's becoming incredibly difficult to do that, and Google is an absolutely enormous company.
The EU says Google's tactics in the Android case include requiring smartphone makers to pre-install Google Search and the Chrome browser in return for access to other Google apps. And they say it bars the manufacturers from using rival versions of Android. It's reportedly set up a panel of experts to give a second opinion on the case, and their ruling is expected later this year.
Talking Stocks is after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for Talking Stocks. 45 stocks traded today, of which 17 advanced, 23 declined, and 5 traded firm. The main JC index declined by 175 points to close at 236,382 points. The junior index also declined by 12 points to close at 3,133 points. 2.7 million units traded, valued at more than $34 million on the Jamaican dollar market. And on the US dollar market, over 620,000 units traded, valued at over 137,000 US dollars. Proven investments with over 406,000 units changing hands accounted for 14% of the market volume. 1834 Investments was second with 346,000 units trading. Lasco Manufacturing accounted for more than 305,000 units, amounting to 11% of market volume, crossing the floor. Palace Amusement Company was a top advancer, up $50 to close at $550, followed by T-Tech, up 74 cents to close at $9.25, and the General Accident Insurance Company, up 17 cents to close at $3.17. The main decliners were Kingston Properties, down $1 to close at $8, followed by 1834 Investments, losing 14 cents to close at $1.36, and Pulse Investments, down 26 cents to close at $3.76. And that's all the news we have for this evening, but before we go, a recap of our top story. Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett says the tourism sector is beginning to play a greater role globally in helping to grow economies. The minister says that's why there has been greater focus on maximizing the sector in Jamaica. Thanks for watching. For more content, visit our website at batvja.com. I'm Andrew Laidley. Pleasant viewing.